It's my first time. I'm a tech conference speaker, so I'm so grateful to you to choosing my presentation and coming here. I hope you will enjoy it. So a little bit about me. My name is Alina, and I am a front-ender at Shopify. I'm also a co-founder of Riga Girls organization from Latvia, where our goal is to educate and inspire women and girls about technology. I'm also contributing to a similar organization in Vilnius, which name is Vilnius Girls Code. And if you want to make some workshop for us, please let me know afterwards. We can arrange this. I'm from Latvia, and a year and a half ago, I moved to Vilnius to live and work here, and not planning to go back. It's pretty amazing here. And some time ago, I was browsing Instagram, and I saw hashtag augmented reality. So I pressed and started scrolling, and exploring. And what I saw amazed me. It was really beautiful experiences. So I thought, how can I make such, right? And as I said, I'm a front-end developer. So I was too lazy to learn Unity or native development for Android or iOS to make a native app. So I obviously thought, how can I do this on the web? By the way, is there any front-end or back-end developers, basically web developers? Could you raise your hand? OK. Some of you, cool. And this presentation is accessible to everyone. I didn't include too much code, so you will understand it anyways. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about what I've learned and what I've tried. And I want to cover three main parts. First thing is immersive tech in general. Basically, what is augmented reality, its use cases, existing apps, and why on the web exactly? Because, spoiler alert, there are more reasons than just my laziness, right? Then AR on the web right now. What tools are available, what is possible, what is not possible. And here I will talk in detail about ARGS and AFrame libraries. And of course, we'll show some demos. And then I will talk about the future of AR on the web, which is WebXR. So who here used augmented reality? Not on the web, but in general. Could you raise your hand? All right. So not all of you. Then before we move forward, I want to cover what this is exactly. So immersive tech is a set of technologies which include VR and AR. VR, or virtual reality, is 100% computer-generated thing. We usually use a headset, and 100% of what we see inside the headset is virtual. It's 100% computer-generated. And when we take headset off, we see the real world, or reality. And something in the middle is augmented reality. It's a real world, and on top of it, some virtual objects as a layer, right? So if we compare those two concepts, VR and AR, we can compare it from ways, let's say, who controls the environment. So you can view it in this way that in VR, it's a developer who controls the environment because they create the world around the user and let the user play with it. And in AR, is the user who feeds the real world to the app, and app should adapt, recognize, and do something about it. However, with VR, there are some problems. In VR, we can experience symptoms which are similar to motion disease or sickness. So it means that we can feel like we are dizzy, we can feel nauseous. Some people even reported vomiting after using VR headsets. So it can be like too real, even if it's virtual. And also in VR, we can get eye strain. So it's not so pleasant. In AR, we don't have such effects, mostly. There might be some eye fatigue, but it's not such big as after using VR headsets. It's not for everyone. It's not everyone experiencing this, but there might be some complications with VR. And if we look at VR through headsets, then what are the devices we use with augmented reality? Well, first is HoloLens by Microsoft. That's HoloLens 2. It's very expensive, almost 3,000. And if you're curious to try it, well, now you can't. It was released only a few days ago. But there, I saw a stand by Microsoft. They offer you to try HoloLens 1. So I recommend it. You just go, subscribe, and you try augmented reality. So that's first. Second is Magic Leap. It's also a company which offers you a headset. And of course, the cheapest option is your phone or tablet. Well, not all the phones are able to show AR, but if it was manufactured in the last like 3 or 4 years, most likely it is AR capable. And by AR capable, I mean that it has the software and the hardware to handle AR. And the hardware can be like gyroscope, camera, of course, and so on. So let's talk about application fields, right? So most popular of applications which people know in AR is Pokemon Go. And this game did a really great job in popularizing AR for the general audience and developers as well. And besides gaming, if you used face masks on Snapchat, in Messenger, on Instagram, then congrats, you used augmented reality. Because it's not some object maybe always which augments your face, but it's some augmentations to the real world, which you can see. Besides social media, it's beauty industry. You can see that the woman does some gestures or mimics with her face, and then her makeup style changes, like different eye shades, different color of the lipstick. So it's also one of the use cases. Another cool example I found is in education. Imagine, kids on history lessons don't just look at the architecture in the books, they can see it in AR and view the building from all the sides. Much more immersive. Another example of education is Google Translate. For instance, here you can see how we translate by adding the virtual layer on top of the real label in a physical world. And what excites me about AR, it's not just some games like Pokemon Go, where the AR is used, it's also more regulated industries. For instance, healthcare. Last year, one of US companies got clearance for using their software in pre-operational surgical planning. If you know this organization, US Food and Drug Administration gave this clearance to them. And the image is just for information. It's not actually how it will look like, right? But basically, AR will be used just a few minutes before actual surgery, right? Another example of more maybe serious AR usage I found out in aviation. Last week, I went to another conference. It was in Portugal, Web Summit. Maybe you know this. And I talked with a representative from Airbus. And she told me that they actually use AR as well, right? And I was curious where. So they use it first during maintenance of certain model of the aircrafts. And second, when they build satellites. So it helps them to like set things up with certain precision, to also remind of the protocol. So as you can see, if such regulated industries are using AR, it's not just for gaming or some small jokes. It also gives you much more serious possibilities. Another examples are tourism, advertisements, retail, because you know, when you're shopping, imagine taking a bike and putting it in your garage. It would be quite comfortable to not drag it and find out it will not fit there, or checking how vase look on your shelf, right? Because AR is great for the sense of scale relative to the environment. And now, why the web? right? As I said, first reason, I'm a web developer, so that's how I started to try it on the web. But there are more cases why we should care about AI in the browser. First, it's easier to deploy. Imagine if you build AR in native app. Then, you have to develop it for several platforms. Yeah, there are like possibilities to do it like in a, for several platforms, but have like some shared code base. But still, you have to care about this. Then, your developed app, you have to submit it for the review, right? And it might not go through in App Store or Play Market. Then, you have to pay the fee, to actually submit your app. And even if you do all of that, then you will have hard time maybe even getting your app to the user's desktop, because web has bigger reach, is a fact, right? For instance, do you know how much apps, on average, last year, Americans installed on their phones monthly? Can someone guess how much apps American people install? No, like per person. How much I install if I'm like living in US? 0. Right? Very unexpected. Like 63% of Americans, I don't know stats for Europe, unfortunately, but 63% of Americans install 0 apps per month. So, and in general, if we compare top apps and top websites, then we see that web has bigger reach. And ask yourself, if you want to check something quickly, would you go to the store and look for the app, or you would go to the browser and search for it? So with the web, if you're building AR, you can focus on a value, you can focus on telling the story, instead of thinking about costs and distribution that much as with native apps. And considering all of that, I wanted to find a way to build AR on the web today. And truth be told, it's not so easy. What I've discovered is that there are no native browser APIs which allow you to build seamless AR experiences. So unfortunately, yeah, we don't have fully capable AR on the web yet. However, there are libraries which allow you to build some AR experiences. And about them, I want to talk today. But before we go to practice, I still wanted for you to get acquainted with some theory. So the main problem in AR is to recognize the world around the user and put objects or make adjustments to this world. And there are several ways how to approach this problem. So one of the ways is marker-based AR. It means that we have some marker or, I don't know, pattern, a visual aid for the app to find its position in the physical world, right? And it can be some pattern, it can be an image, right? So I have some with me today for the demos, like that, right? And how it's achieved, basically this image should be pre-coded in your app in advance. And when I launch the app, then the app just searches for it in the outer world. It's quite simple. And, but that's a limitation, right? So another kind, which is more exciting, in my opinion, is markerless augmented reality. It means that it doesn't need any clue, any anchor in a physical world like image. It can just adjust to environment. It can recognize surfaces, walls, ceiling, and so on. And it's possible thanks to simultaneous localization and mapping algorithm, or shortly SLAM. And this algorithm uses computer vision to recognize physical world and make map of it inside the app. And that's one of the examples. right? That's actually something from Shopify, where I work. If a user is going to some online shop and wants to see how the vase looks on the shelf, they can just get this vase in their flat, play with it, put here and there. It looks quite real, in my opinion, and make the decision to buy or not to buy. As you can see, there are no markers. It's just being put on the surface. And the last, but not the least, AR is location-based AR. It's the AR which is based on coordinates, right? It uses two pieces of hardware. First is GPS, and second is magnetometer. Compass is based on magnetometer as well, and it gives us orientation, like which side do we look, right? And from the exciting things, just 2 months ago, in September, Google released Live View in Google Maps. And with this, you can try AR, and it will help you to get oriented in a space if 2D maps are like too confusing, which happens to me all the time. So all of those three kinds, they are, it's not like exactly on the web. It's something which can be both on the web, in the native. It's just types of AR. So let's see what is there on the web. And let me introduce you ARGS. That's the most popular library on the web right now to make augmented reality. It's marker-based, so it means it needs some marker. And the markers can be quite different. It can be a pattern, it can be a barcode, it can be an image, it can be also a combination of those, where every marker is a separate one, or it can be multiple markers which are treated as one single marker, right? For instance, it could be used for stability of the image. And cool things for me, because I was following this library for quite some time. It was built 2 years ago, and so far it's been just marker-based. And months ago, it became location-based. So now we have also location-based AR on the web. And it's built with AR.js library, which you can use without this ARGS separately, if you wish. And yeah, so ARGS helps us to place the virtual objects into real world. It handles that part. It handles motion tracking. But what about the content, right? We have the tools to place something inside our app, but what it will be. So there are various ways. One of them is, for instance, WebGL, Web Graphics Library. And that's the code. You don't have to like read it, but just look at the amount. That's the code to put a sphere with some shading, right? So in my opinion, that's a bit unreasonable to start with that. If you're just starting with AR on the web, that might be like too complicated, may I say. And if we need such code to draw a simple sphere, imagine what we'll have for more sophisticated scenes, right? So to avoid that, I would recommend, and what I did, is to use AFrame. So AFrame is another library, and as they state on their website, it's a web framework for building virtual reality experiences, right? So it might not be so apparent that it could be great with AR as well, but it has an API to be plugged with ARGS and be used for AR, which exactly what we need, right? And basically this library, it gives us some primitives, such as sphere, or cube, or some other shapes, right? Plane, and so on. And with those primitives, we can build some scene. And it's based on web components. If you work with front-end, maybe some of you know what is web components? Someone? Okay, not all. So basically, web components, it's like custom HTML elements on the web. If you work with React.js, there are like React components with custom attributes, and web components is something similar. You just don't need React, right? And thanks to this technology, AFrame exists. And first demo time. I need a volunteer, please, someone. Please. Just give me 1 minute, but you will need this. Okay. And I will share my screen with you from the phone. I will be showing simple example from AFrame and ARGS, just basics. 1 moment. And inside of this example, you will see like simple rendering on the marker, also some animations. Oh, 1 moment. So, as you can see, I'm now in the browser, right? And the website asks access to my camera. I allow it because that's how I will show. So, yeah, cool. Everyone is here. Could you please stand here? Yeah. And show the marker to me. Just, yeah, closer. So now you can see I have a Venus planet next to the marker, right? It's a bit unstable, but it's there. Now I included some simple JavaScript logic to handle click. So if I tap on my phone, I can also see planet Earth and Moon. It's astronomically incorrect, so don't judge me. Could you please come closer? So you can see as the marker moves, yes, just maybe fingers carefully. Oh, yeah. I can move and I can see it from several sides. If you can like move the marker up and down, yeah. So you can see that now Evgenia controls the planets. Yeah. So you can see that the Earth is also like spinning. Yeah, so that's all. Thank you. Yeah, so let's talk about how it's achieved. It's actually not so many lines of code. First, in a head, we just include 2 scripts. Yes, it's AFrame and AFrame AR, which is the ARGS build, which works with AFrame. So just 2 scripts, and you're good to go and code your planets. Yes. Then here you can see body, and where you see like in the middle AFrame components with the gray. Actually, don't mind that. I will talk like what goes inside a bit later, but 1 moment. Yeah. But currently, let's focus on other things. You can see that after the body, we open a scene tag, and this tag is like the root in AFrame, right? And then inside of it, we have camera, which means that we actually want to like film, because if we wouldn't like include the certain things, we would be like in just 3D without the real world. And then there is a marker tag here. Yes, and whatever will be put inside of it will be handled by ARGS and will be recognized only when we see the marker, right? So I use already pre-coded marker, which is called hero marker, right? So that's the one. Now, what goes inside this marker? I show only one of the planets, but with the other ones, it's the same. Just different sizes, different positions, obviously. So you can see tag a sphere. Then it has some animation that I want to rotate it, to what degrees, loop true, so I want to do this indefinitely. Then where it's placed, radius, some ID to control for it to appear and disappear, and visible false, because at first I wanted to hide it, and then I wanted to show it by click. And this Earth min, that's the image, right? That's just 2D image, which is being placed as a texture on the sphere when it's rendered, right? So it looks like simple HTML element with its own attributes, and it's all available on AFrame documentation. You just go and you check those primitives, and you see how to use them. And if you wish, to play with it, you can take a picture of this link and use hero marker, right? Hero marker, just Google it, and there will be many pictures of it, so you can even place it. You don't have to print it. You can place it on your screen in computer, and you can use your phone to look on the computer, and then by this URL, you will have this small app. Yeah? Time for another demo. I need another volunteer. Someone? Thank you. So, give me a bit more time to switch to demo mode again. Now I want to show you how custom marker will look like, because that's one of the ARGS features, as I named. You can work with custom markers. So let's say you don't want to use this hero marker. It's maybe not so beautiful, and you want to promote your own brand. Could you show this? So it's build stuff logo, right? And now let's see what it will show us. Could you please? So just come a bit closer. The subject of this year is software jungle, so I wanted to make something similar. Oh my gosh, hold on. I will refresh because it went up and down. One moment. Yeah. Yeah. So I made the logo in Blender. If you know, it's app to make 3D graphics. I used it for the first time. And the palm tree I took from a source where you can take 3D objects for free. It's called Sketchfab, if you're not using them commercially. So you can see that I'm moving and it's moving. Could you move? So yeah, it's working all fine. So thank you very much. So let's return to presentation and learn how to make that. So yeah, at first you saw that I used palm tree and the logo. It's quite custom object, right? It's not something you can find in the AFrame in primitives. So you have to first have them or make them, and then you have to import them to your app. And it's done via asset management system in AFrame, right? And you just describe what's the source, and you give it ID to reuse it later, right? And I have those assets, and why I need this asset management system? It handles two things. First, it lets you to store all the assets in one place, so it's just for convenience. And the second important thing is that it lets you to preload and cache assets, right? It's needed basically for your objects and textures not to appear when you don't expect it. It preloads it, and then it gives you better performance when you want to actually render it on the screen. And that's what we, it doesn't work. That's what we load. And how I made the marker, there is a web page. It's ARGS marker training. And I just uploaded build stuff logo, which is this green square. And there are not much settings. You can choose the size of the black box, right? And then it lets you to download PNG and PAT files, right? PNG is something which you print out here, and you can use it like in the physical world or on your device. And the PAT is a pattern file, right? Because if we use ARGS, and it's not something which is encoded already in ARGS, like hero marker or some other markers and patterns. If we want our own, then we use also a marker, right? But in URL, we show this pattern build logo dark.pat file, which I got from the website, right? So it's like such combo. And then you can see here how I refer my objects. It's by source and MTL, hashtag, and the ID. And in the previous slides, I actually showed you this demo where I make material source earth min, right? And it's actually not correct way because it's not handled by asset management system. So don't do this. It's just to show you that it's also possible for the sake of simplicity. And you can do the same on your phones. You can take a picture of this link. It's this URL. And also, this custom marker is by this URL, right, for you to download and not to make it yourself. And actually, there is, one thing I wanted to mention is don't forget to write HTTPS, because otherwise it will be like not secure, and then your browser will not want to give access to your camera. So it's quite important, don't skip it. And there are some alternatives, right? So those are two libraries which are open source. And one of the alternatives is eighthwall.com. It's a paid service, right? It's a markerless AR. So, which is pretty cool, because you don't need anything on the web. And in ARGS, it's not covered, right? But the problem is that there is no proper occlusion. And actually, I want to return now to the demo and quickly show you again what is occlusion. Give me a sec. The occlusion, it's something when one of the objects is blocked by another object, right? So you see the logo here, right? And now just look at me for one moment. So if you look at me and you would put your hand in front of your eyes, you will not see me, right? Some people are trying, that's good. It would be really concerning if you would put your hand in front of your eyes and you still would see me, right? Weird. So if we have this in real life, we would expect same from AR. But the issue is I put my hand in front of my eyes, which is camera, and like there is still, you see, something. So this is like not proper occlusion. It's not handled. And why I mention it in eighth wall specifically, it's not just eighth wall problem. It's in general problem of the AR on the web. But since it's paid service, I think it's maybe not optimal to pay and then get something which is like not fully capable. So just a warning to consider if you plan to use it. And the last demo for today is Ostrow Note. And now I don't need anyone's help, because actually this will be a markerless demo. Sorry. So you can see this 3D model. And I can move it with my finger. Now I'm just rotating it. And you can see this little box in the bottom right corner. So I will press it now, and it will activate AR mode. So now it asks my iPhone to move. because it wants to recognize the environment, and here you go. Yeah. So this is the Ostrow Note. I can make it smaller. It will be like small, cute Ostrow Note. Hold on. There is a leg. And I can also move it. And I can see it from all the sides, right? And I can also move it, let's say, on my table. Oi, that was unexpected, right? Okay, maybe back to Earth. So you can see that I can play with it, and it's quite easy to move. And actually, this technology is used in Shopify to let you try the purchases you make in your own home. So how is this achieved? Because remember I told you there is no Markerless AR on the web. So how I was able to place this Ostrow Note here without any marker? If you want to try, that's the link, right? The thing is, I used special technology, which is quite new, and that's the code. That's actually all we need to do this Ostrow Note thing. It's quite short, and all I need is to include the script, because I use model viewer, which is a web component. As you remember, it's like custom HTML element. So I include the script just to use model viewer, and then I use model viewer, and I specify, all right, so I have iOS source, I have a just source for Android, I have AR attribute, and here we go, we have an Ostrow Note in our room. And that's all the code. As you can see, it's much more concise than with AFrame and ARGS. But the trick is, it's not exactly in a web, even though I went there from web browser. The trick is, I used 3D Viewer, and the 3D Viewers is like capabilities of iOS and Android. On iOS, it's called QuickLook. It actually was released just last year, and it's available from iOS 12. Yeah, and it needs special file format, which is USDZ, which is used basically only on in Apple products, right? And on Android, it's called Scene Viewer plus different appropriate for Android type of files. And the thing is with those viewers is that even though model viewer web component, this one, lets us open it from the browser, if you remember, then when we actually open it, it doesn't look like a browser. It's a bit different app. It just opens easily from the browser, but it's QuickLook, or if you check it on Android, it's in Viewer. But the problem is we don't have any customization. It's a single object, so we can't place, like, let's say, 2 objects unless they're literally in the same file. And we can't make, I don't know, something on click, something change color. It's not so customizable, unfortunately. But it's still quite neat, because it's markerless, in my opinion. And now let's talk about the future, which is WebXR. And XR, it stands for either mixed or extended reality, and which includes both VR and AR. But before we talk about the future, I wanted to talk a little bit about the past, right? To understand how we got here. So first tries to make immersive web started 5 years ago. And since then, Web VR was implemented. So those of you who are in the web development probably heard of it somehow, but it's not available for regular users because it was behind the flag. It was experimental. It means that it wasn't enabled by default. And if user would not specifically go to flags on their phone and turn it on, they wouldn't see any web VR or virtual reality experiences, right? Nevertheless, many libraries were built around it, yeah? But even some browsers shipped it. Chrome, at least, I know, behind the flag. And there were some problems with this implementation, some pains of developers, plus also it didn't account for AR. And hence, it was reborn as WebXR 2 years ago. And WebXR would give you all the possibility to reach for immersive hardware in your phone or other device. Actually, that's another cool thing, that it should be available on the web, which runs on not just phones or tablets, but also in like headsets, for instance, if there is like web capability. And who develops that? It's a group, which is called Immersive Web Working Group. And there are like individuals, there are some smaller companies, and there are big companies like Mozilla, Oculus, Microsoft, and so on. And you can check them on the GitHub. That's where all the collaboration happens. They're called Immersive Web. And they discuss technical implementation. They discuss some use cases. They discuss also issues. For instance, I found issue on privacy, like what stops someone from heat testing entire room to generate a mesh, you know? So they discuss various kind of things. It's interesting to read, in my opinion. And the thing is, AR in WebXR will follow after VR part, because as I said from the history, it's done to replace VR and also add AR. So now they're in a stage of replacing VR. So unfortunately, we will not get AR capabilities right away, because it will not be delivered in one huge chunk. But when it will happen, we will have heat test, light estimation, surface detection, meshes, anchors, and so on. Heat test is something, let me show you, just theoretically. It's when I see the world with my camera, and then I press with my finger, like I reach to the real world. Then imagine a ray going from my finger tap through the real world. It will hit the surface, right? So this is called a heat test, and it will give you info about where it hit, like the real world. Light estimation is needed to make your models to look realistic, because you don't want to put too bright model into a very dark room. It will not look realistic. And some other features. And let's sum up. So smartphone is the most affordable device to use AR. There are many application fields, from games to aviation. AR on the web will have bigger reach, so it's worth to consider. Then AR can be markerless, and location-based. ARGS is the main tool you need if you want to develop on the web right now. And also don't forget about native 3D viewers in browser. And exciting thing is that browser API is being developed, but AR is not so close. And if you got excited about all of that and want to try or be prepared to when AR on the web will be a standard, then I recommend you first to try ARGS and AFrame. Just go on their websites, try basic things like what I showed you, and like just get excited about that by trying. Then the next thing is, read WebXR docs on a GitHub in this immersive web group, because of course they're preparing like specification in this W3C website, like working draft and so on. But I find on GitHub it's much more understandable to read. They have those explainers about each concept. So I highly recommend to check out those. I gave link for specifically AR things because it touches, like the whole repository, Immersive Web touches not just AR. So by this link you find only AR subjects. Then AR design guidelines. I recommend this because it's not language specific. So it will be suitable for you if you want to try AR even on the native There are no any language mentioned. It just lets you think in a new way about AR apps, because it's not the same as when you develop, let's say, news portal. It's something different. Like, it lets you think, okay, what will be the size of the experience? Also how the user can hold the phone and so on. And the last but not the least is course on interactive 3D graphics. Yes, and I liked that because it's also not language specific. They just show some schemes. There is a little JavaScript, but not too much. Mostly it's just general explanations, and it explains such concepts as meshes, light, camera, and such, for you to leverage when you will use any web library for 3D graphics or not web, so it's useful anyways, in my opinion. And if you want to try it yourself, besides the links I gave you, there is a cool feature Google released just a few months ago. Try it yourself. Go to Google. Make sure your language is English, because for some people it didn't work with other languages. Type some animal, like tiger right here, and then you will see view in 3D, and you can put a tiger into your room or any other place. You can also try other animals. I tried duck, octopus, and a dog, right? So unless you regularly Google animals, you probably didn't know about this feature. So this is fun to try. And as you can see, web has a lot of exciting things for us to try, and hopefully that's what you will do. Thank you.